Hey, welcome to 600 Seconds in HRTech. I'm Dani Johnson. I'm live from Learning Technologies in London, and I'm here with Absorb Software. Thanks for being here. I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and then tell me one thing that you find surprising about the conference.
Yeah, my name is Leslie Kelley. I am the Chief Growth Officer for Absorb Software. I think being at this show, we've been seeing a lot of, obviously, the AI-powered conversation happening all over the place. I think what's really surprising to me is that one of the biggest challenges that everybody has in L&D is the fact that they need to be able to show the outcomes of what it is they're producing. I'm not seeing as much of that happening across the floor. I see a lot of conversations around the fact that we want to make this happen, but I'm not seeing technology that's actually making that possible.
Okay, so you're talking about like the ROI or the proving of the worth of the thing that you're
Exactly.
doing. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about AI. There's lots of AI. I think it's a little bit different than it was last year because last year was just like AI everywhere. And this year it seems to be much more pointed. Hey, AI that helps you do a thing. And sure, that's useful. But I'm curious as people that you're talking to, your customers or your clients, as they're looking for tech, learning tech that's enabled with AI, what are the questions that they're not asking or what are they not getting to that they actually should?
Yeah, I think everybody is saying that their technology is AI powered, which is fine that's part of the technology that they have. What I see a lot more of is a lot of sort of bolting on of AI technology. So you see things like better search bars. You might have things like a chatbot that's put into the system, but it's sort of AI that's bolted onto an existing software system. I think one of the things that we feel very passionate about is that we've had to really rebuild our entire learning system. That when we think about what it means to become ready for this AI world and where the world of learning is actually going, it really meant us rethinking how we have built our entire system from the ground up. And it's not about bolting anything on. We have to really be able to have it be embedded in everything that we do.
Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that. What do you mean embedded in everything that you do?
So when we talk about the AI piece being in everything, we've had AI in our system for many years. So we've had AI-powered content creation. We've had personalized learning paths from a skills perspective. That was all great at that moment in time, but the last year has opened up a lot more opportunities when we think about what AI can actually do, both from the learner experience and from the administrator experience, but also from the business experience.
Okay.
So when we think about the learner experience, obviously it opens up opportunities for new types of learning modalities. It opens up the opportunity for things like more of that dynamic in the flow. I hate the term in the flow of work, but the reality is that some of those learning moments need to come with a very good understanding of what I need at that moment. And AI is allowing that to happen, which I think that's really exciting for the learners on that side. For the administrators, obviously tons of automation. You're seeing systems that are able to actually take actions on behalf of administrators. That's great for anybody who's normally stuck behind the computer. But I think through a lot of the new technology that's going to allow us from a data perspective, I mean, for years, we've been helping customers take learning data out of their system, put it into Snowflake and BI, and be able to tell that story about what type of impact the learning has had. The new technology is allowing us to actually start to think about how we bring that data in and drive some of the decisions before learning actually ever happens. And I think that's the part that's really exciting.
Okay, so let's go there because my data actually shows some of this. So we just finished querying 461 vendors about what they do and how they do it. And what we found was the functionality at the beginning and the end of a learning experience are really high. So we're seeing some stagnation in the actual sort of like, hey, now you're learning, but the before, like the skills and the assessment and those types of things. And then on the back end, the performance tracking and the analytics that can then be fed into different systems is just like skyrocketing right now. Both of those. Tell me a little bit about what that looks like in Absorb and how you are thinking about that process. Because I think you guys use the term sort of closed loop. Last time we talked.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think learning is that sort of closed loop. I think a lot of people are using that term, but it's because of the fact that learning doesn't stop at sort of a moment. It's not a particular event that happens. Like you said, it's really about what happens before that event happens. And it used to be that we might have sat there and had an intake form and somebody said, I need to make my sales reps close better, whatever it might be, right? But now learning actually has the ability to sort of walk into that conversation and say, I can see that 30% of your reps are having this kind of challenge, and these are the types of things that they're engaging with. Here's the recommendation that I am making around from a learning perspective, how we help them go on that journey, go through, have these new modalities, have new ways of engaging with them with role plays and simulations and all of these things that make learning at least a little bit more engaging. But then on the back end, you're continuing that loop back into, did it actually work? Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, did that rep actually do anything different after they've had that training? And the reason the loop is so important is because of the fact that with every turn of that loop, it's important that that system gets smarter. The system has to know and understand, not from necessarily the individual, but the pattern recognition that happens within a system should be getting smarter. That's the beauty of where we're going to. And so that also is something that I think organizations are really going to benefit from, because while we've offered these SaaS products that have been sort of purpose-built for lots of organizations, you can have some of the same technology, but actually somebody that really understands you as an organization and what your organization needs. And that's really cool.
That's interesting. You're hinting toward context, which I think is it's a word that I'm hearing like floating. It's not necessarily baked into anybody's conversations yet, but it's kind of floating out there. So if it kind of sounds like you're moving into enablement, like it's not just quote unquote learning anymore, it's enablement. You're in a process to be continually improved.
Yes.
I'm wondering, that dips out of learning, right? So it dips into operations in some instances, definitely into the business line, and into a lot of like the talent management softwares that are out there. How are you sort of navigating that space? You're not just learning anymore, which means your buyer has to be different, which means you have to negotiate some of those things that maybe you haven't before.
Yeah. I mean, it's really tough, but I think unfortunately, starting with just learning is actually not going to get you in the conversation. I know you've done a bunch of research around this about where L&D has started to move out of those strategic conversations. And what's keeping people up at night, the boardroom conversations are all about the fact that AI is changing us faster than we ever have before. And I need to make sure that my organization is going to be ready. And I think that actually puts learning in a very good position to drive that conversation around how they will enable, continuous workforce improvements, being able to create performance improvements across the business. That's a great place to be. But they can't actually be in that conversation if they're not starting with the right level of context around what it is that they need to start that conversation with. So if they're starting with learning and they're starting with developing employees, it's not exactly this place that the CFO and the CEO wants to start from. They need to start from a business enablement standpoint. They need to understand that they need to know that you understand what are the measures in our organizations? What are the things that our people need to learn and what they need to do? And how is that going to drive us forward? And you get to be the mechanism to start to tell that story. So I think it's a good opportunity, but it does mean shifting the conversation in a lot of ways for lots of people in the organization.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting because what I've been hearing is like learning will probably be subsumed by talent and enablement, which is one way to go. But what you're saying is, dude, we're in an awesome spot. We could actually leverage this into a much larger conversation and much more sort of influence in what the organization is trying to do. Is that how you all see it?
Yes. And I think that's what we're hearing from people as well. Is I was at a conference a couple months back, and everybody in the room was saying, I don't want to be called L&D anymore. Yeah. I want to be a performance accelerator. I want to be part of the business enablement side of the house. And so whatever that means, when, whether or not they get, eaten up by different types of parts of the organization, the concept of itself is still there, from the sense of we are a team that can help our business move forward. Yeah. We just need to have a different conversation about how we get there.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So one final question. If I am a client and I'm coming to absorb because I need something, what should I push on?
So I think it's a couple of different things that we've been talking about. I think first is that when you think about how we're going to shift that conversation, when we think about how we're going to go outcomes first, I think first and foremost, there's a lot of reasons why people who have been sitting in L&D for so long are stuck. So changing that infrastructure is really important. That means changing a lot of things. It's how you think. It's about how you talk about the business. It also means the systems that you're looking at. It means how the systems are going to be able to support you and help you tell that story. So I think that's sort of first and foremost. I think obviously you should be asking any system that you talk to, whether it's Absorb or anybody else, how is this actually going to help me start to create more continuous learning moments? We think about things like the fact that there can be content moments, there can be practice moments, there can be human guidance moments. Mentorship is incredibly important to us because what happens before and after a digital learning event is probably more important than the actual digital learning event itself. So being able to understand how we create those continuous learning moments, but also know what's happening at those times is really important. I think things around, obviously from the administrative standpoint, pushing on automation, efficiency, taking actions for me. You should expect every vendor to be able to do that for you because you don't want to sit behind the computer. I think you have to continue to push on hyper-personalized learning paths for people while we know that there's a lot of personalization that can happen, the beauty of that is the system should know me better. It should know my learning style. It should know what I've done in the past, my tenure. Those types of things should influence what I see. And we should really be pushing most important to be able to push towards a system that's going to help you tell the story, what happened after learning, how did the business change after learning, and what is that outcome you drove. Those are the things that I think are really important. And if I kind of summarize all of that into, asking them what happens on day 91, like what happens after the fact that, you've done the demo, you bought the system, you've implemented it. Is the system actually getting smarter? Is the system learning and understanding my business better? Because that is the expectation that AI allows all of us to be able to do, is to create smarter systems that know our learners, that know our people, that know our business so much better. And that's going to really, I think, change the game from a technology standpoint.
Okay. One final question. I think I said one final question before. Yeah. This is really
the final.
Yeah, I'm interested because in the research, in the 461 vendors that we looked at, and also in conversations that I'm having with people at this particular conference, I'm hearing a lot more about solutions than I am about selling tech. And so it feels like there's another shift going on where we're moving past the, hey, you should buy my new tool, and more toward like, let me help you solve this particular problem. Are you seeing that? And if so, how are you all reacting to it?
I think that feels like a bigger question around just software in general. I mean, technology is getting much easier to build. I mean, right. We on our side are being able to build, custom built solutions for some of our customers in a matter of weeks, as opposed to what used to take us months and days. And that brings out sort of a new way of thinking about technology. And I think that the conversation around the solutions is really much embedded into what we've been talking about, which is, I have a business problem. I need to be able to solve that business problem. And tech has always been just one part of the problem. It's always been like, I think some people look at technology as should be the saving grace. Do it all for me, fix it all for me. But there are other factors in that need that help you tell that story. And you have to reflect within yourself about, how am I going to leverage that tech to then help me solve the problem for the business? And that is a holistic way of thinking about solving problems for business. That's not let's just go buy the tech and solve it. And so for many years, it felt like we could solve problems that way. Yeah. We got a lot of efficiency and productivity out of technology. But as we move into the world where you have to prove whatever it is that we're working on, the investments that you're making, you've got to prove that it works and that it matters. I think it's forcing people to think differently about how they walk into the room with the CFO and they ask for the money. They walk into the CEO and justify some of the initiatives that they're investing in. You really have to rethink that. And so I think that's actually a really good thing.
Awesome. Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah, of course. It's great to be here with you, Dani, as always.
Hey, I've just barely finished reviewing the video that I did with Leslie Kelley from Absorb at Learning Technologies, and a few things stood out to me from this conversation. The first one was her drawing attention to the idea of bolted on AI. We've been talking about bolted on AI for a while now, but it was really evident as I was walking the expo floor at Learning Technologies, how many organizations, how many vendors are actually using bolted on AI. So instead of rethinking from the ground up, which Leslie says is crucial to making sure that we're moving towards something in the future, she said that she's also recognizing organizations that are just bolting it on. You need a coaching tech? Sure, we'll bolt on conversational AI. You need to create content faster? Nobody needs to create content faster. But if you do, there's an AI for that. And so she talked specifically about rethinking what AI can do and how AI should be systemic throughout the technology rather than something that was just bolted on, which I thought was good. The second thing that she talked about, which was interesting, I think I prompted her with a discussion on the closed loop because their marketing is starting to reflect this idea of, hey, we can help you solve a problem from beginning to end. We can help you assess and do all these things and then track on the other end and make sure that that problem is solved. The closed loop, she says, is only valuable if the system gets smarter every time. And I think this goes back again to the AI built in throughout the entire system rather than just being bolted on. Because if you build it right, then that closed loop can get smarter every time. It can take into account the needs of the organization as well as the needs of the individuals and come up with something that is better every single time it goes through it rather than just one closed loop that solves one problem, which I thought was also interesting. And then the final thing, I talked to her a little bit about the identity crisis maybe that L&D is going through. In the past, most technologies and most L&D organizations have focused just on the learning piece of it, like the learning event. And increasingly, we're seeing them dip into things that have been traditionally talent. So skills, talent mobility, career, all of these things we're starting to see pop up in learning vendors, which I think is really interesting. She mentioned that she sees that identity crisis as an opening. So she said that learning isn't going to get you into the room anymore with the CFO or anybody that has the ability to give you money to do something. But the organizations that are doing this well are starting with the business outcomes and then working backwards. And so again, back to that sort of closed loop thing. What are we trying to do? All right. How can we do it? All right. What do they need to know? What data tells us that they need to know this thing? And starting to talk more completely about what the organization needs rather than how cool your learning tech is. So those are the three things that I heard from Leslie. I found it to be a really interesting conversation. I was lucky enough also to snag their CEO, who I talked to on Monday, and we'll be doing one of these with them as well. But I really like the way that they're thinking about things. I think their marketing needs a little bit of help. But in general, I like the way that they're thinking about how AI can actually change the game for learning.